Hello, beloveds, and welcome to Christian Emotional Recovery, a podcast for those who are survivors of childhood trauma, emotional neglect, and narcissistic abuse. This podcast is hosted by Rachel Leroy, a college professor and trauma survivor. Many of us spend years trying to heal and don't get anywhere. We don't always target the trauma itself, which is so often what keeps us stuck. This podcast is where faith meets science. Rachel is an emotional healing expert with 20 years of experience applying healing modalities that helped her start making progress after nothing else worked. She'll show you how to do the same. Each week, we'll cover a topic that will show you how to heal trauma for good. Please check out our website and show notes at christianemotionalrecovery.com and join the Facebook community, Trauma Survivors Unite, Christian Emotional Recovery.
Hello everyone, welcome to Christian Emotional Recovery. I'm your host, Rachel Leroy, and this is episode 8 of season 5 of Christian Emotional Recovery. This is episode 8 of season 5, and it's the art of being gentle with yourself. The art of being gentle with yourself. In my opinion, I believe that this is a topic that Christians, especially American Christians, tend not to talk about enough. Fruits of the Spirit that we hear a lot about are love and kindness sometimes and patience, but how often do we hear about gentleness? And especially how often do we learn about being gentle with ourselves? I always assume that if you're going to practice the fruits of the Spirit, whether it's peace or long-suffering or whatever the case may be, patience, that it needs to be a holistic approach to that fruit of the Spirit. So gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit. If we are being gentle, we are being like Christ. So I believe that being gentle in every area of our lives, including with ourselves, is being Christ-like to ourselves. And if we're Christ-like to others, which we are called to do, we are a person too, so why not be gentle and kind to ourselves? Self-compassion is part of that. And self-compassion in a world that pushes perfection is radical. And self-compassion, I talk about it a lot on the podcast, but I don't know if I've done an actual episode on it, but that is definitely something I want to come back to. But let's go ahead and jump in. I don't really have an outline for this one. This is just one that kind of came to me, and I was like, I'm just going to kind of use my heart on this one. I do that for some of the episodes, especially in a world where we're becoming more dependent on technology. I want to be able to use my own wits sometimes to be able to make these episodes because I know it's coming from an authentic place. It's coming from a place in my heart and in my soul, and it's not just electronic sources and internet sources helping me find my research. Now, I am going to use some research a little bit here for some definitions and stuff, but basically, I'm just whatever comes to my heart is what is going to be in this podcast. So bear with me, but I like to do some of these and let God give me what he wants me to have for you in some episodes. So the art of being gentle with yourself is just that. It's an art. And you know that any art or any kind of healing that you're doing, healing from trauma as a trauma survivor, you know that it is an art form. It's not all science. It's a combination of art, faith, and science. Art, in this case, being something that you have to kind of learn and you have to feel your way through it. And to a degree, there is a little bit of throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's not all random, obviously. There's a lot of specific things that work, and if you do them, they will help you. But there is some art form involved because every human is radically unique, and what works for one person won't work for another, and what didn't work for you earlier may work for you later, and vice versa. So it just depends on the circumstances. Experimenting and trial and error and learning is part of the growth and healing process. It's part of how we grow in our faith, and it's also part of how we grow in healing our trauma through daily practices, trying new things, doing tried and true things, adapting tried and true things into new ways. There's a lot of ways. So being gentle with yourself, part of that is self-compassion. That's not all of it. They're not the same thing, but there's a strong overlap here. So I do want to talk about self-compassion a little bit. And I've studied self-compassion quite a bit, and there are some great resources and some great experts on self-compassion. And a lot of this is backed by science and backed by years and years of research. Two people that I recommend if you want to learn more about self-compassion: Kristin Neff, I think that's Kristen, if I'm not mistaken, Neff, Neff, and Sharon Salzberg. Those are two wonderful experts. Google them and look up their work. Their work is amazing. It's reputable. It's research-based. It's scientific. I highly recommend their work if you want to learn more specifically about self-compassion. Exploring self-compassion and then going more into the gentleness side of it more in general. How can we be self-compassionate? How can we be gentler with ourselves? Again, I like to give not just abstracts, but also concrete ways that you can do that. I have an article here called Self-Compassion, that's all it's called, Self-Compassion, by Dr. Kristin Neff. She's one of the two experts that I told you about, and I will put her article in the show notes. And like I said, I encourage you to check out her website, do some research, Google her. She's got all kinds of free resources and paid resources if you are interested in looking more into self-compassion from one of the world's most respected experts on the field. So it's Dr. Kristin Neff, and I love her work. But she says here in this article, having compassion for oneself is not really that different than having compassion for others. Like I said, you just take the fruit of the Spirit and you invert it on yourself. Should you show it to others? Yes. But why would you show it any less to yourself too, right? It's both. I think if our faith takes a holistic perspective and we start from the inside and work our way out, then whatever fruit of the Spirit that we're practicing and that we're showing others, it is authentic because it comes from our own practice with ourselves, and it's pure and it's authentic, if that makes sense, because it's coming from the inside. We don't have to fake it till we make it, so to speak. But she says, derived from the Latin, the term refers to how we're with, C-O-M, suffering, passion, with suffering. Think about times when you felt compassion for a close friend who was suffering. First, to experience compassion, you have to actually notice that your friend is struggling or feeling badly about themselves. And then secondly, she says, if what you feel is compassion rather than pity, you realize that suffering, failure, and imperfection is part of the shared human experience. So do you see how when you learn it internally, you can also project it externally to other people, which is obeying God's command to love one another, to have compassion on one another, to exercise the fruits of the Spirit towards other people. There but for fortune go I, she says. Therefore, but for fortune go I. Finally, you respond to your friend with warmth, understanding, and kindness, feeling the desire to help in some way. These are the three main elements of compassion: mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. So she says self-compassion simply involves doing a U-turn and giving yourself the same compassion you'd naturally show a friend when you're struggling and feeling badly about yourself. So one thing I've never understood is why some people, and you're free to disagree with this is fine, this is just my experience, this is just my opinion, but I've never understood how some Christians, and it's especially true in extremely fundamentalist groups, how they say self-love is anti-Christian and not Christ-like. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're literally taking what Jesus taught you and turning it in on yourself. Are you supposed to hate yourself? Are you supposed to be harsh with yourself? And if you don't know how to do those things, you have to practice them. So practicing self-compassion, in my opinion, if you take a holistic approach, which to me is the only way to take an approach to healing, which means whole, WHOLE, the whole, then you're going to practice it everywhere you go because you're not going to be double-minded. The Bible does say not to be double-minded, so whatever we're practicing on the outside, it doesn't need to just be an empty, whitewashed tomb. What's inside needs to match it. So if we're practicing this stuff on ourselves and then we put it on to other people because we learn how to do it through our own healing, think about how powerful our help to other people can be then, and how authentic and grounded it can be. That's why I've never understood why some people say, you can't love yourself, that's ungodly. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm sorry, I have a bit of a strong opinion about that. But just coming back to Kristen Neff's article, she says self-compassion simply involves doing a U-turn and giving yourself the same compassion you'd naturally show a friend when you're struggling or feeling badly about yourself. It means being supportive when you're facing a life challenge, feeling inadequate, or making a mistake, instead of just ignoring your pain with a stiff upper lip mentality or getting carried away by your own negative thoughts and emotions. So you don't get caught up in the narrative or the storyline. You stop before you can start spinning out of control. You stop before you start beating yourself up. Or if you are doing it, you don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. You just say, hey, stop. And then you stop and you take a step back and you're like, whoa, let's slow down here. Don't talk to yourself like that, you say it in a way that's compassionate, like you don't fuss at yourself too much, but you might take a little bit of parenting there, a little bit of self-control, another fruit of the Spirit, and be like, okay, let's stop this for a second. Let's break this up, like two siblings that are squabbling. Let's be kinder and gentler with ourselves, okay? And then start trying to take a softer, gentler tone and all that. But you stop to tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? So instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself, Neff says, for various inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronting your failings. After all, whoever said you were supposed to be perfect? God knows we're not perfect. God knows we make mistakes. He knew that when He got us, and He loves us and approves of us and accepts us anyway. I'll say it again. God knew what He was getting when He made us, and He still loves, approves of, and accepts us anyway. That doesn't mean we don't fall short. That doesn't mean we don't disappoint God. That doesn't mean there might not be things God would like to see us change and improve. But He still loves us and takes us as we are now through His grace. And then Neff says, you may try to change in ways that allow you to be more healthy and happy, but this is done because you care about yourself, not because of you are worthless or unacceptable as you are. So do you see where the energy comes from? When you work on yourself and healing yourself and changing, it's not because you're not worthy, it's because you are. And you don't have to do anything to earn that. You cannot do anything to earn that. You already are. Perhaps most importantly, she says, having compassion for yourself means that you honor and accept your humanness. Things will not always go the way you want them to. You will encounter frustrations. Losses will occur. You will make mistakes. Bump up against your limitations. Fall short of your ideals. That is the human condition, a reality shared by all of us, she says. So the more you open to this reality and work with it instead of constantly fighting against it, the more you will be able to feel compassion for yourself and your fellow humans in the experience of life. So that is a little bit about self-compassion. That is a very, very brief crash course in self-compassion. But a little bit more about how self-compassion feeds into gentleness. Gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit that Christians often overlook, like I said, particularly when it comes to ourselves. And I often wonder, why is this the case? And, I have some criticisms of American culture and American Christianity because I think that Christianity has become too Americanized in a lot of ways. I love America. I love my country, and if you're not from this country, bear with me. But this is part of what influences Christianity here and even around the world. But I still think that there can be some flaws in how American culture can influence Christianity and even corrupt it in some ways. And gentleness is not something that people seem to uphold as an ideal to aspire to. But as Christians, and according to the Bible, it is. So it doesn't matter if it's culturally popular at the time or if it's trending. Gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit, and it's something that we need to learn to do with other people and with ourselves. So how can we be gentle and meek towards ourselves as we're called to be gentle and meek towards others? What does it look like when it comes to healing trauma, for examples? So in some ways, I think trauma is just the opposite of gentleness and self-compassion, which is all the more reason to practice gentleness and self-compassion. Trauma can be harsh, or maybe I should say what causes trauma can be harsh. Trauma is just the effect of that. It's not the cause, and trauma is not our fault, but those experiences can be harsh and hard and pressing and sharp and painful. They can be in some cases. And because our spirit, body, and mind crave self-compassion and gentleness and need them, the reason that we crave these things is because they're just the opposite of what trauma was. And instinctively, our body, our mind, and our spirit know that quiet, gentleness, drama-free, easygoing, compassionate environments, understanding people, a soft landing, so to speak. The reason most of us instinctively know to go towards things like that and to be that way with ourselves, and the reason we crave that gentleness is because our trauma background was just the opposite. And instinctively we know that those opposite traits are the ones that will help heal our trauma. Gentleness heals our trauma. Now, sometimes we have to be fierce warriors to heal trauma. That is true. Sometimes we have to look at and do things that are hard and painful and difficult. But there's also a time and place where we need to take it easy. And there's also a time and place when we need to take care of ourselves and be gentle, like I said. And when we start doing the healing work, when we end up in a safe place for the first time ever or in a long time. That's why some of us, most of us who are trauma survivors who have been abused, when we start to heal, we'll sleep a lot. We'll want to isolate. We'll want it to be quiet. We won't want things that are harsh on our senses. We want things that are drama-free. We want easygoing environments. We want an easiness to everything for a while. It's not lazy that you feel that and that you crave that viscerally in your body and your mind and your spirit. That's exactly what happens when you're healing. You crave those things because that's what you need to be able to come back into balance, to find your equilibrium again, to find wholeness again. And for times, you need to be in that place. Even Jesus, who was out in the multitudes with hundreds and thousands of people, touching people, talking to them, interacting with them, healing them, providing for them, preaching to them, teaching them. He got tired of all that because that can be overwhelming. That's crowds. It's probably hot. It's loud. It's noisy. And so Jesus, what did he do when he just couldn't take it anymore? He would go to a quiet place. He would go out in a garden or in the wilderness at night when it was quiet and cool, where he could be alone with his own thoughts and with God. And that is a gentle environment. So even Jesus craved that kind of isolation and quiet and drama-free environment because he needed it to restore himself. And likewise, on a larger scale, I think we need those kinds of environments and people in our lives for a while when we're in a certain stage of our healing process. Now, that's going to look different for everybody. For somebody like me and a lot of people that listen to this podcast, I am an HSP. So an HSP is a highly sensitive person. I have other podcast episodes on that. And HSPs have to have gentleness. We have to have gentleness. And we're also the best people at knowing how to interact with other people and communicating in a way that is gentle. And I have that gift, I believe. I have that gift. It helps me with my teaching. It helps me with the podcast. Because telling it like it is, yes, I do that. But at the same time, and I'm authentic, but at the same time, I try to do it in a way that's gentle, because so many of us have had harsh sermons, people screaming in pulpits at us, telling us how depraved we are, what terrible people we are, how we're sinning and we're going to hell and all that, and people beating their Bibles at us. And a lot of us have religious trauma because of that, and some of that may be because either you experienced childhood trauma and you're more sensitive to that, Or maybe you just have a disposition like me where you're just more sensitive in general, and that's just not a way to communicate with somebody like that successfully. So I don't do that on this podcast, but besides the fact that I'm not a preacher, and I probably never will be, knock on wood, I probably never will be. I'm a teacher. I'm not a preacher. But if that kind of environment just feels wrong to you, it might be because you're a trauma survivor or you're a highly sensitive person. I will put the information in the show notes about HSPs. It's a scientific term. It's not something I made up. It's based in science. There's a percentage of people that are highly sensitive. And if you are one, you need even more self-compassion and even more gentleness than the average person. And you need to protect your space and your energy even more. That doesn't mean you don't love other people. That doesn't mean you don't help other people. That doesn't mean you don't go out and environments where God calls us to go to do those things, but I'm saying that you might need to do that for less amount of time and spread out how much you do it. It might mean that there are seasons in your life where you don't do that and you focus more on self-compassion, or maybe you do that in ways where you're able to protect your space and your sanity and do it in ways that's gentle with yourself where you can still help other people in other ways. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of ways that you can be gentle with yourself. And there's a lot of reasons you might need to be gentle with yourself, but those are just some that come to me off the top of my head. Like for me, in the last few years, I have wanted to isolate more than I ever have. I work at home. I'll be honest with you, I do an online church. I'm a member of an online church. I do go out a couple of times a week during the week to get out of the house. And my husband and I usually go and do something for a good bit of the day on Saturday. And I do go visit people for the day here and there and go places for the day. I do stuff like that. And I've actually felt called by God in the last few months to start getting out in the world a little more. So one thing that I've done is I joined another online group, but I also started meeting friends in person more because there's nothing that substitutes for face-to-face. So there may come a time in the ebb and flow of your life where maybe once you've hit a certain level of healing, God might call you to go back out in the world. And I'm not saying this is true for everybody, and not everybody may have this luxury, but a lot of people, when you hit a certain stage in your healing, God may call you to isolate more and to spend more time in a quiet environment to help your nervous system and your body and your mind to heal. It's also a nervous system thing, yes. And so that's part of the gentleness of being gentle with yourself. So what are things that I've learned about slowing down and giving myself grace? Well, I pushed myself mercilessly at a job that I worked at, and I hate to admit that I'm partly responsible because in order to keep that job, I literally pushed myself to almost being in the hospital every term as a professor. They worked us to death, and they did not pay us anything. And I complied. I should have quit sooner. I was scared to death that I wouldn't be able to pay my bills, so I didn't. And I stayed there and I submitted to that abuse for several years. And now, to this day, I have chronic health conditions and I'm paying for that. So please, if you're younger and you're in a situation where you feel like your very survival is being pushed, is pushing up against your health, choose your health. Find a way to choose your health. If it's a job you love but it's killing you, then go find something that you kind of like that is gentler. So, because your health is more important than any career. And you know what I have to show for all that hard work? Nothing. Just chronic conditions. I pushed myself too hard. I should have put myself first. I should have said no. If I had to do all those things in order to keep my job, I should have found another effing job. So being gentle with yourself sometimes comes at a cost. Sometimes you have to make decisions and choices in your life that are like, enough, no more. I can't do this to myself. There are times where you may need to push yourself. And like I said, not everybody has that luxury, but there might be little things you can do to be gentler with yourself. But that's one thing that I did is when I left that job, I was able to take better care of myself. I was able to focus on doing the healing work. I didn't even know how much I needed to just slow down and it, just heal my body and heal my mind and heal my spirit. Other ways that I've learned to be gentler with myself is that everything doesn't have to be done today. Now, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about chronic procrastination, which, by the way, I struggled with for a long time too. And, we all struggle with it some. I'm still working on that. But I've made major improvements in that area of my life. However, balancing that with the other, there are things that don't have to be done today. You can slow down and you can take the break. You can take the nap. If your body is tired and you're able to do it, then take the nap. Set aside the 15 to 30 minutes in the morning to meditate, to pray, or to go for a walk. Set aside an hour for those if you're able to. Whatever you're able to do something for yourself. I think self-care is Christ-like. And again, wasn't it self-care when Jesus went to the wilderness? Wasn't it self-care when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane talking to his Father? He even said, God, I don't want to do this. He followed God, he obeyed him, but he told him how he felt. So being honest with your emotions, there's a whole book in the Bible called Lamentations. It's where you just let your hair down, let it all out in a way that's safe, in a way that is balanced. But I'm saying that being gentle with yourself is sometimes allowing yourself to be human. Sometimes being kind to yourself when you fall short. My inner voice is not even the same as when I started this healing journey. It is completely different. And I had a breakthrough in therapy about a week ago. I've been doing EMDR therapy with my new therapist, whom I've had since the beginning of the year. And I have been so hard on myself about money and my job, even though I feel, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I have looked and looked and looked and looked inside of myself. What am I missing? Why am I not getting a better paying job? Why am I not making more money? And I'm doing all the practical stuff. I'm looking for the jobs. I'm seeing the career counselors. I'm doing the trainings. I'm applying for the jobs. I'm using the ATS software. That's that word match thing where AI is doing everything now. I'm doing all of that. And I'm sticking with it. Yeah, I'm not quitting. I've taken breaks, I've slowed down, and I'm still not getting anywhere. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I get to a point where it's like, I have to ask myself, do I really trust myself? Am I really blaming myself? I asked my inner child, who I feel like I'm not providing for properly. I asked her, I said, what do you think of all this? How do you feel? Do you resent this? Because I started thinking about when I was a child, not being able to get a lot of the things I wanted and how that affected me. I'm not trying to sound like a spoiled brat, but we all have had experiences like that unless we grew up wealthy, doing without things that we needed or wanted at times. And that wasn't always our parents' fault. I'm not blaming my parents for that. I'm just saying that that's what happened because we didn't always have a lot of money. And so I kind of feel like I've internalized my parent-child relationship with my parents with my own inner child and myself, right? Because I've done a lot of inner child work and a lot of IFS. And what I found, I asked my inner child, one of my inner childs, I guess there are multiple ones because they're different ages, how do you feel about all this? And she's like, I completely and totally trust you. I don't blame you for anything. You're doing the absolute best you can. And I also looked at it from the other perspective, from the inner child to my older self, my protective part, and I asked them the same thing, and I got the same answer. And it was like, when I did the EMDR work around that, I cried and cried and cried because have you ever had a breakthrough that was just so powerful? You just cried and you were like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. Oh my God, this is like I love myself. This is it's hard to explain, but when you have it, you've had that experience. And it was like a moment like that where I knew that I was truly doing everything I could and that I wasn't causing this problem for myself, that I could be more positive and more hopeful, but I wasn't causing this problem for myself, and that I completely love and trust myself. Do you know how long it's taken me to get to that point? That is self-compassion. That is gentleness with yourself. That is where the work of being gentle and kind with yourself. If you start to feel panic, for example, and you're like, it's okay. It's okay. You don't get mad at yourself for feeling panic. The inner adult, yourself, talks to the inner child that's getting triggered, and you're like, it's okay. You're safe. You don't push those feelings down. That's not what I mean when I say this. You let yourself feel it. You ask it. You're like, so what's going on here? You're scared. Tell me about that. And you just approach it from a tone of curiosity, for example. And I've learned to take a tone with my inner children, so to speak. I hope this doesn't sound really kooky and weird, but if you've done inner child work, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you've done IFS, internal family systems work, you also know what I'm talking about. But you say things like, it's okay. You're safe. It's okay. Tell me about what's going on. Why are you scared? You don't say, why are you scared? It's more like, why are you scared? What's going on? It's okay. It's okay. And let it express how it feels. And that's kind of what that acorn technique that I have in the meditations and the YouTube channel is. And I'll put a link to those as well, a lot of resources that I have. But just living a drama-free, quiet, easygoing life, being gentle and kind with yourself, parenting your inner child in a way you wish you had been parented if you were not, with that kindness and gentleness, knowing that you can start again tomorrow, taking care of your health, putting your mental health and your health above all other things, no matter what, if you have that possibility and that luxury, and if not, doing that as much as you can. Those are some ways that you can be gentler with yourself. Doing the mental health work and knowing that there are going to be times where you're going to be doing grueling, difficult, painful, scary work. But then there's also a time and a place, maybe even mixed in with that, where you do a gentle meditation to help calm your nervous system. Or I do a lot of stuff with the nervous system that is about healing it and calming it and coming back from that activated state back to that regulated state. And even pulling myself out of the sort of where you're disassociated back into that active but healthy, gentle, regulated state. So gentleness puts you in that regulated state, and a regulated state allows you to be gentle. So you start with whichever one you can get a hold of and then go from there, and it becomes this positive cycle in your life. So those are some ways that we can apply the fruit of the spirit of gentleness to ourselves. And I know that this episode has been a little disorganized, so thank you for following me and coming along with me on this journey. And I wanted this to be a shorter one, but this also helps us, like I said, when we internalize something because we've practiced it for so long, it becomes second nature, which is what I've been able to do with internal family systems and using curiosity, being gentle with myself, finding that balance. Then we can learn to take that, what we say to ourselves, and then it becomes like something we can say to somebody else. Like if we're a parent and our child's crying, we're like, oh, sweetie, what's wrong? It's okay. What's going on? So you see how you take that internal voice and then you start to put it towards other people. It might be somebody in the world, not our child, if you don't have children. Or it might be whoever. It doesn't matter. But you can learn to be gentle and compassionate with other people. Maybe even in situations that would have made you mad or worked you up or gotten you nervous or at an earlier time. It takes years to get to that point. So don't expect yourself to completely be there in 6 months. You will see progress in 6 months, but it takes years. There's not a specific timeline. Everybody's is different. You might get there faster than I did, or it might be the same speed or slower. But what matters is that you're making that progress. You notice that progress, you celebrate that progress, and you're gentle with yourself when you notice what small steps you're taking, because small steps add up to big steps. So just remember to be gentle with yourself, work on gentleness, work on self-compassion, work on just prioritizing your mental and your physical health, because you can't get those back sometimes. And if you do, it sometimes takes a lot of work to get them back. So take care of the body you have now. If you're a highly sensitive person, protect your environment and protect your energy and set boundaries, and don't feel bad about that. If you are in a phase of your life where you're healing from trauma and you need that same thing applies. If you are trying to figure out how to cultivate the fruit of the Spirit that is gentleness, study about biblical gentleness, study about self-compassion, and talk to yourself with that spirit of gentleness and kindness and curiosity, because a lot of these fruits of the Spirit, like patience, meekness, gentleness, kindness, they all overlap and they all have similar qualities. So study and learn about the other ones, and don't just show them to other people. Do show them to other people, but show them to yourself too. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself, and that will bring you peace. And then that peace will emanate out, and you'll be able to be kind, gentle, and patient with others as Christ commanded us as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you for following my meandering speech. This is The Art of Being Gentle with Yourself. It's episode 8, Christian Emotional Recovery. I'm your host, Rachel Leroy. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day. And remember, beloveds, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God loves you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Christian Emotional Recovery, hosted by Rachel Leroy. For links to this week's resources and to join the discussion, check out this episode's show notes at christianemotionalrecovery.com, where you can also find links to our YouTube channel and Facebook group. Join our email list and get other episodes and resources. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review the podcast and tell a friend who may benefit from this message. See you next time. And remember, beloveds, God loves you, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made.